Colonel Toshihiro Imai spread detailed charts across his desk at Ofuna Interrogation Center in late November 1944. The captured B-29 crewmen represented the intelligence breakthrough Japan desperately needed. These airmen possessed secrets that could turn the tide, radar frequencies that guided formations through darkness, fuel calculations for the 2,820-mile combat radius flights, and most critically, the bombing target priorities for America's $3 billion Superfortress program. Imai's team had identified flight engineers as prime targets. Unlike pilots trained to resist interrogation, engineers knew technical specifications that Japanese military scientists craved. The B-29's pressurized cabin system, remote-controlled gun turrets, and advanced fire control computers represented technology Japan couldn't match. Every captured manual, every technical detail could help Japanese designers close the gap. The strategic mathematics favored Japan's interrogation teams. American B-29 production had reached 375 aircraft monthly by early 1945, with Boeing's Wichita plant alone producing 4.2 Superfortresses daily. But Japanese intelligence calculated that discovering bombing patterns, formation tactics, and radar countermeasures could multiply their defensive effectiveness. With only 375 fighters protecting the entire Japanese mainland, every intercepted bomber formation mattered. Japanese interrogators prepared systematically. Medical staff monitored prisoner condition, while specialists in lead questioning techniques refined their approach. Imai's method had proven successful with submarine crews. Prisoners revealed operational cycles, base locations, and patrol patterns without realizing what they'd disclosed. The fragments of casual conversation, when assembled, had provided complete intelligence pictures of American naval operations. These bomber crews would be different, Imai reasoned. Flight engineers carried technical manuals, navigators knew target coordinates, and radio operators understood communication frequencies. Unlike the seasoned submarine veterans, these were young airmen from America's rapidly expanded training programs. What could pampered Americans, raised on abundance, possibly withstand when faced with serious interrogation methods? The first captured B-29 crew arrived at Ofuna in December 1944, just weeks after the devastating November 24th raid on Tokyo. Technical Sergeant Robert Williams, flight engineer from the 73rd Bomb Wing, became Imai's primary target. Japanese intelligence had identified flight engineers as the most valuable sources. They understood the B-29's advanced systems, fuel consumption rates, and operational limitations that could help Japanese defenders. Imai began with his proven lead questioning technique. Conversations started with seemingly innocent topics: Williams' hometown in Ohio, his family, pre-war occupation as an automobile mechanic. The interrogator's tone remained conversational, almost friendly. Japanese medical staff monitored the prisoner's physical condition, ensuring he remained responsive enough for productive questioning sessions. The strategic value justified intensive effort. Each B-29 represented a $600,000 investment in 1944 dollars, packed with revolutionary technology. Williams potentially knew radar operating frequencies for the AN/APQ-13 bombing system, fuel mixture settings for the Wright R-3350 engines, and formation flying procedures that guided 300 bomber raids. Even fragments of this information could help Japanese interceptor pilots predict American tactics. Japanese interrogators had developed detailed questionnaires over months of preparation. They wanted to understand the B-29's pressurized cabin limitations at 31,950 feet, the remote gun turret fire control systems, and most critically, the target selection process. Did Americans prioritize aircraft factories, shipyards, or civilian areas? How did weather reconnaissance determine mission timing? Which industrial targets caused the most concern among American planners? Imai's medical team carefully calculated prisoner nutrition. Too little food produced delirium and unreliable answers. Too much maintained defiance. The optimal balance kept prisoners mentally sharp enough to provide accurate technical details while physically weakened enough to cooperate. Previous interrogations of submarine crews had taught Japanese interrogators that gradual pressure produced better intelligence than immediate violence. The questioning expanded systematically. Williams revealed his training location, Lowry Field, Colorado, without realizing its significance. Japanese intelligence immediately cross-referenced this with intercepted radio communications and captured documents. Other crew members mentioned their Boeing plant visits during training, inadvertently confirming American production capacity estimates. Navigator statements about fuel calculations verified Japanese assumptions about B-29 combat radius limitations. Japanese confidence grew with each session. These young Americans, many barely 20 years old, lacked the hardened resistance of veteran submarine crews. Williams discussed his engineering background openly, describing automotive experience that translated to aircraft maintenance. The casual conversations yielded steady intelligence dividends without requiring harsh interrogation methods. Colonel Imai documented everything meticulously. Williams' comments about Wright R-3350 engine temperatures provided insights into American metallurgy advances. References to radar training suggested American electronic warfare capabilities. Even seemingly innocent remarks about base facilities in Saipan helped Japanese intelligence understand American logistical capabilities. The interrogation teams worked in shifts, maintaining constant psychological pressure. When Williams showed fatigue, fresh interrogators appeared with new conversation topics. The medical staff adjusted food rations based on cooperation levels. Japanese interpreters, many educated in American universities before the war, used familiar cultural references to establish rapport with prisoners. By January 1945, Japanese intelligence believed they had developed an effective system. The lead questioning approach had successfully extracted submarine patrol patterns, base locations, and operational cycles from previous prisoners. American bomber crews, raised in peacetime comfort, would surely prove even more cooperative than seasoned naval veterans. The systematic approach seemed perfectly calibrated. Medical monitoring ensured prisoners remained functional. Psychological techniques avoided the unreliable confessions produced by immediate torture. Detailed documentation captured every useful fragment of technical information. What Japanese interrogators didn't anticipate was how fundamentally they had misunderstood the character of American airmen who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions in the Pacific War. By February 1945, Colonel Imai's confidence began showing cracks. Technical Sergeant Williams had endured 6 weeks of lead questioning without revealing a single bombing target or radar frequency. The conversational approach that had broken submarine crews was producing only scattered fragments of useless information. Williams discussed his hometown weather, his mother's cooking, even his girlfriend's letters, but never mentioned operational details that Japanese intelligence desperately needed. The medical staff reported concerning developments. Williams had lost 37 pounds, developing the hollow-eyed appearance of severe malnutrition, yet his mental resistance remained absolute. When asked about B-29 formation tactics, he recited his name, rank, and serial number. When questioned about radar systems, he discussed baseball statistics from the 1943 World Series. The systematic starvation that had weakened his body seemed to strengthen his resolve. Japanese interrogators faced mounting pressure from naval headquarters. American B-29 raids were intensifying weekly, with 334 superfortresses devastating Tokyo on March 9th alone. Japanese fighter defenses needed every advantage: fuel consumption patterns, formation weaknesses, targeting priorities. Yet captured airmen continued providing nothing useful despite months of careful psychological manipulation. Yasuo Kobayashi, nicknamed Shorty by prisoners, assumed direct control of interrogations in March 1945. The compact interrogator had developed more aggressive techniques during his work with captured submarine crews. Kobayashi believed that American airmen raised in comfortable civilian conditions would crack faster than seasoned naval veterans when faced with serious physical pressure. The bamboo kendo sticks arrived that week. Kobayashi's new approach combined systematic beatings with continued starvation. Williams received daily sessions where bamboo strikes targeted nerve points along his spine, shoulders, and legs. The physical pain was calculated to break mental resistance without causing immediate death. Japanese intelligence still needed functional prisoners who could provide coherent technical information. Other captured B-29 crewmen received similar treatment. Navigator Lieutenant Thomas Chen from the 6th Bomb Group endured mock executions designed to simulate the psychological pressure of imminent death. Radio operator Staff Sergeant James Murphy faced isolation chambers where guards awakened him every 30 minutes for weeks, preventing restorative sleep that might maintain mental defenses. Kobayashi documented each prisoner's breaking point with scientific precision. Chen revealed his navigation training location after 3 mock executions. Murphy disclosed radio call signs during his 4th week of sleep deprivation. Yet the core operational intelligence remained elusive. None of the airmen revealed actual bombing targets, formation tactics, or radar countermeasures that Japanese forces could exploit. Japanese medical staff expressed growing concern. The prisoners were deteriorating faster than anticipated, developing beriberi, scurvy, and pellagra from severe nutritional deficiency. Williams weighed 98 pounds by April 1945, barely half his original weight. His physical condition was approaching the point where reliable interrogation would become impossible. Kobayashi increased session frequency, convinced that American resistance would collapse under sufficient pressure. He introduced new psychological techniques, forcing prisoners to write confessions in Japanese script they couldn't read, playing recorded sounds of other prisoners supposedly confessing, creating false evidence of family members under American military investigation for war crimes. The interrogation teams worked around the clock, rotating fresh questioners against exhausted prisoners. Interpreters used American cultural references to establish false rapport, then exploited emotional vulnerabilities. Medical technicians monitored prisoner vital signs, ensuring subjects remained conscious during extended sessions. Despite escalating methods, Japanese intelligence continued collecting only peripheral information. Prisoners revealed training locations, pre-war occupations, family details, and personal histories, but never the operational intelligence that could help Japanese defenders intercept B-29 formations or predict American bombing patterns. By late April 1945, Colonel Imai faced an uncomfortable realization. These American airmen possessed something his systematic interrogation methods couldn't break: a core of resistance that seemed to strengthen rather than weaken under extreme physical and psychological pressure. By May 1945, Yasuo Kobayashi faced an unprecedented crisis at Ofuna Interrogation Center. Technical Sergeant Williams had lost 63 pounds and could barely stand upright. Yet he continued reciting baseball statistics when asked about B-29 radar frequencies. The systematic torture that had broken countless submarine crews was producing no operational intelligence from American bomber crews. Japanese military headquarters demanded results. The devastating May 25-26 Tokyo raid had involved 464 B-29s, destroying 16 square miles of the capital. Japanese fighter defenses had shot down only 26 superfortresses, a pathetic 5.6% intercept rate. Without bomber formation tactics, radar countermeasures, or target selection intelligence from captured airmen, Japan's air defenses remained virtually helpless against American industrial might. Kobayashi authorized medical experimentation at Kyushu Imperial University in Fukuoka. 8 captured B-29 crewmen from the May 5th mission were transferred to civilian doctors who had trained under Unit 731's biological warfare program. The university physicians promised to extract technical information through systematic dissection of living subjects, claiming that extreme physical trauma would break mental resistance that conventional torture had failed to overcome. The experiments lasted 3 weeks. American Flight Engineer Staff Sergeant Dale Plambeck was subjected to lung puncture procedures designed to simulate high-altitude decompression, while doctors questioned him about B-29 pressurization systems. Navigator Second Lieutenant Freddie Fredericks underwent systematic organ removal while conscious, with Japanese physicians demanding target coordinates between surgical procedures. Radio Operator Technical Sergeant Howard Fredrickson had his nervous system progressively severed while interrogators sought communication frequencies. None of the 8 airmen revealed a single piece of operational intelligence before dying on the operating tables. Japanese physicians documented every detail of the procedures, convinced that American resistance would collapse under sufficient physical trauma. Instead, the dying airmen continued providing false information, deliberately misleading their torturers about technical specifications and operational procedures. Kobayashi received similar reports from other interrogation centers across Japan. At Tokyo Kempeitai headquarters, 62 American airmen had been burned alive during the May 25th raid when Japanese guards refused to unlock their cells during the firebombing. The prisoners had faced certain death without revealing bombing targets or formation tactics. Even facing imminent incineration, captured airmen maintained operational security that Japanese intelligence found incomprehensible. The medical staff at Ofuna documented extraordinary physical resilience among surviving American prisoners. Williams weighed 87 pounds by June 1945, suffering from advanced beriberi, scurvy, and pellagra. His body had consumed its own muscle tissue for survival, leaving him skeletal and barely functional. Yet his mental faculties remained sharp enough to provide detailed but completely false technical information during interrogation sessions. Japanese interpreters reported growing frustration among interrogation teams. Navigator Lieutenant Chen, reduced to 92 pounds after 4 months of systematic torture, had memorized an entire fictional set of bombing procedures that he recited with perfect consistency. Radio operator Murphy provided detailed but imaginary communication protocols that sounded authentic enough to fool Japanese technical specialists for weeks before being exposed as deliberate deception. By July 1945, Colonel Imai faced an uncomfortable statistical reality. Japanese intelligence had captured over 200 B-29 crewmen since December 1944, subjecting them to the most sophisticated interrogation techniques developed during 4 years of Pacific warfare. The systematic torture, medical experimentation, and psychological pressure had produced thousands of pages of prisoner statements. Yet not a single piece of actionable intelligence had emerged that helped Japanese defenses intercept American bomber formations or predict target selection. The young American airmen, many barely 21 years old, had demonstrated a core of resistance that Japanese military psychology couldn't explain. These soft Americans, raised in peacetime abundance, were proving more resilient under extreme duress than veteran Japanese soldiers had expected from any enemy force. Something fundamental about American characters was proving far different from Japanese intelligence assumptions. By June 1945, Commander Yokura Sashizo at Ofuna faced an intelligence crisis that defied every assumption about American character. The skeletal remains of Technical Sergeant Williams weighed 79 pounds, his body consuming its own organs for survival. Yet he continued providing elaborate fictional accounts of B-29 radar systems with mathematical precision that impressed Japanese technical specialists before being exposed as sophisticated deception. Japanese military psychology had predicted complete collapse within 8 weeks of systematic torture. 6 months later, captured American airmen demonstrated resistance levels that surpassed veteran Japanese soldiers under similar conditions. The medical staff documented impossible survival statistics. Prisoners maintaining mental acuity while their bodies approached clinical death from starvation, disease, and systematic physical trauma. The war situation demanded immediate intelligence breakthroughs. American B-29 raids now involved over 500 aircraft nightly, systematically destroying Japan's remaining industrial capacity. The July 1910 Sendai raid eliminated the city's aircraft manufacturing in a single night. Japanese fighter defenses had collapsed to ineffective gestures. Fewer than 12 interceptors managed to engage formations of 400-plus superfortresses over Tokyo. Sashizo authorized the final escalation protocol in early July. Captured B-29 crew members would face immediate execution unless they provided complete operational intelligence within 72 hours. The ultimatum represented Japanese military doctrine's ultimate psychological pressure: certain death versus cooperation. Previous experience with submarine crews had shown that facing imminent execution broke even the most hardened resistance. Navigator Lieutenant Chen, reduced to 84 pounds after 7 months of torture, received the execution notice on July 12th. Japanese officers expected immediate capitulation. Chen possessed target coordination data for the systematic destruction of Japanese cities. Instead, Chen requested writing materials and spent his final day composing a detailed letter to his family in California, discussing his younger sister's wedding plans and his father's vegetable garden. Radio operator Murphy faced similar conditions. Weighing 91 pounds and suffering from advanced pellagra, he could barely stand during his final interrogation session. Japanese interpreters offered immediate medical treatment, adequate food, and comfortable quarters in exchange for communication frequencies and bomber formation protocols. Murphy recited his girlfriend's favorite poetry from memory until guards removed him for execution. The systematic executions produced zero operational intelligence. Flight engineer Williams died on July 15th without revealing a single authentic technical specification. His final words, documented by Japanese medical staff, concerned his mother's Sunday dinners and his hope that his younger brother would avoid military service. Navigator Chen was executed July 18th after spending his last interrogation session describing California orange groves in elaborate detail. Japanese military psychiatrists studied the documented behavior patterns with growing bewilderment. These American airmen demonstrated psychological resilience that contradicted every analysis of Western character developed during 4 years of Pacific warfare. The prisoners had endured physical trauma that killed veteran Japanese soldiers, maintained elaborate deception schemes requiring sophisticated mental coordination, and faced certain death without surrendering operational secrets. Colonel Imai reviewed 6 months of interrogation records with mounting frustration. Over 180 captured B-29 crewmen had passed through Japanese interrogation centers. The systematic torture, medical experimentation, and psychological pressure had extracted thousands of pages of prisoner statements. Yet not a single piece of actionable intelligence had emerged that helped Japanese forces predict bombing targets, intercept formations, or understand American tactical procedures. The young Americans, dismissed as soft products of peacetime abundance, had proven psychologically harder than Japanese military tradition could comprehend. Something fundamental about American character was revealing itself under the most extreme conditions, a core of resistance that grew stronger rather than weaker when facing death itself. By August 1945, Lieutenant General Seishiro Itagaki faced intelligence reports that challenged every assumption about American character developed during 4 years of Pacific warfare. The systematic interrogation of 247 captured B-29 crewmen had produced over 3,000 pages of prisoner statements, yet not a single piece of actionable intelligence had emerged that helped Japanese forces predict bombing targets, intercept formations, or understand American tactical procedures. Japanese military psychiatrists presented their final analysis with visible bewilderment. These young American airmen, many from farms and small towns across the Midwest, had demonstrated psychological resilience that exceeded veteran Japanese soldiers under comparable conditions. The medical documentation revealed survival statistics that defied military psychology textbooks. Prisoners maintaining elaborate deception schemes while their bodies approached clinical death from systematic starvation and torture. The numbers told an impossible story. Technical Sergeant Williams had weighed 168 pounds when captured in December 1944. 8 months later, he died weighing 79 pounds, having lost 53% of his body mass, while continuing to provide sophisticated but completely false technical information about B-29 radar systems. His fictional accounts included mathematical calculations precise enough to fool Japanese electronics specialists for weeks before being exposed as deliberate misinformation. Colonel Imai reviewed documented behavior patterns that contradicted Japanese cultural understanding of Western character. Navigator Lieutenant Chen, facing certain execution, had spent his final 72 hours composing detailed letters about his family's California farm, discussing irrigation techniques and crop rotation schedules with serene precision. Radio operator Murphy had recited his girlfriend's favorite poetry during his last interrogation session, maintaining perfect meter and rhyme despite advanced malnutrition affecting his speech patterns. The systematic torture that had broken thousands of submarine crews over 3 years had produced zero operational breakthroughs with B-29 airmen. Japanese interrogators documented cases where prisoners provided false information so consistently detailed that intelligence analysts spent weeks verifying fictional bombing procedures, imaginary communication protocols, and elaborate but non-existent technical specifications for aircraft systems. Japanese medical staff reported unprecedented psychological phenomena among American prisoners. Flight Engineer Staff Sergeant Morrison, reduced to 86 pounds after 6 months of torture, had memorized an entire fake maintenance manual for B-29 engines, reciting 200-plus pages of fictional technical procedures with mechanical precision that impressed Japanese aviation specialists. The mental coordination required for such elaborate deception while facing systematic physical destruction suggested cognitive resilience that Japanese military psychology couldn't explain. The broader implications terrified Japanese leadership more than individual acts of resistance. These soft Americans, dismissed as products of peacetime abundance and democratic weakness, were demonstrating core character traits that Japanese strategic planning had completely misjudged. If young bomber crews from American farming communities could withstand torture that broke veteran soldiers, what did this suggest about American industrial workers, infantry units, and home front morale? Intelligence analysts presented the statistical impossibility of what they had witnessed. Captured submarine crews had typically provided useful intelligence within 4 to 6 weeks of systematic interrogation. B-29 airmen had maintained operational security through 8 months of escalating torture, medical experimentation, and certain execution. The resistance pattern suggested something fundamental about American character that Japanese cultural analysis had failed to identify. The psychological impact on Japanese interrogators themselves became a secondary crisis. Several experienced questioners requested transfer from B-29 prisoner duties, reporting that the airmen's sustained resistance was affecting their own mental stability. Yasuo Kobayashi, nicknamed Shorty, who had personally tortured dozens of prisoners to death, began showing signs of psychological breakdown by July 1945. What Japanese military leadership was discovering too late to affect strategic planning was that American character contained elements of resilience that their 4-year study of Western psychology had never anticipated. By August 15, 1945, as Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender, Lieutenant General Seishiro Itagaki stared at 8 months of interrogation files that revealed a truth more shocking than any military defeat. The systematic torture of 247 captured B-29 crewmen had produced the most comprehensive study of American character ever conducted by Japanese military intelligence, and the results shattered every assumption about Western civilization that had guided Japan's war strategy. The final statistical analysis was undeniable. Not a single captured American airman had revealed authentic operational intelligence, despite interrogation methods that had broken thousands of submarine crews, infantry prisoners, and civilian detainees over 4 years of Pacific warfare. These young men, many from small farming communities across America's heartland, had demonstrated psychological resilience that exceeded veteran Japanese soldiers under comparable conditions. More disturbing were the documented deception campaigns. Technical Sergeant Morrison had memorized a 347-page fictional maintenance manual for B-29 engines, reciting complex technical procedures with mechanical precision that fooled Japanese aviation specialists for months. Navigator Lieutenant Patterson had provided detailed but completely imaginary bombing procedures so sophisticated that Japanese intelligence analysts spent 6 weeks attempting to verify targeting protocols that existed only in the dying prisoner's imagination. The medical documentation revealed impossible survival statistics. Flight engineer Williams had maintained elaborate technical deceptions while losing 53% of his body mass, continuing to provide false radar specifications, even as his body consumed its own organs for survival. Radio operator Chen had recited poetry in 3 languages during his final interrogation session, demonstrating cognitive function that Japanese medical staff couldn't explain given his physical condition. Japanese military psychiatrists presented conclusions that challenged fundamental assumptions about democratic societies. These American airmen represented the soft civilian population that Japanese propaganda had dismissed as weak products of peacetime abundance. Yet they had proven psychologically harder than Japanese military tradition could comprehend, maintaining operational security through systematic torture that surpassed anything documented in military psychology textbooks. The broader strategic implications terrified Japanese leadership more than the atomic bombs themselves. If young bomber crews from American farming communities could withstand interrogation methods that broke veteran soldiers, what did this suggest about American industrial workers who had produced 100,000 aircraft while Japan struggled to build 15,000? What did it reveal about American infantry units still advancing across the Pacific? What did it indicate about home front morale among a population that Japanese intelligence had completely misjudged? Colonel Imai's final report documented a psychological phenomenon that Japanese military science couldn't explain. American prisoners had demonstrated something beyond individual courage, a systematic commitment to protecting their comrades and mission that operated independently of physical survival instincts. They had faced certain death rather than compromise operations that might endanger other American lives, displaying a form of collective loyalty that contradicted Japanese assumptions about individualistic Western culture. The interrogation failures represented more than intelligence defeat. They revealed that Japan had fundamentally misunderstood the enemy they faced. These pampered Americans possessed something that 4 years of careful cultural analysis had missed entirely, a core of character that grew stronger rather than weaker under extreme pressure, rooted in values that Japanese military psychology had never anticipated. As Japan surrendered, military leaders realized they had been fighting not just American industrial capacity or technological superiority, but a form of national character that their entire strategic framework had failed to recognize. The young airmen who died under torture rather than betray their missions had revealed a truth about American civilization that would haunt Japanese military analysis for generations. They had never understood their enemy at all.